Hello again and welcome to another video. In this video we are going to continue our exploration of working with variables in Java. In the previous video we spent a little bit of time talking about integers as a data type, and we spoke about declaring variables, giving them names, giving them data types, and we wrote a small program which multiplied together a couple of variables, of the integer data type, stored them, and then displayed the result. In this video, we're going to continue with our work. And just as to recap, then, as we were mentioning in the last video, we were talking about how variables are used to represent the data in your programs. They represent data in memory while the program is running in memory, and they are only temporary. So anything that you store in a variable will usually only be there while the program is running. And just one or two other things about variables which are probably quite important to mention at this stage is that when you declare a variable in Java, it's up to you as the programmer to decide what type of data you want to store in that variable. Now, Java is a strongly typed language, meaning that you can only store data once you declare a variable of a certain data type. You can only store that same type of data in that variable. So if you set it up as an integer, you can only store integers in that variable, whole numbers. If you set it up as a string, you could only store text and so on. And yeah, so in this video, we're going to carry on looking at variables, looking at a particular data type called doubles. Um, so in this example here, we had a couple of integers, but with three integers, firstNum and secondNum, and you can see there that we're correctly storing whole numbers in these variables. And but if we wanted to store maybe slightly more precise values in these variables, so for example, 14.678 or 21.987, these are much more precise values. Integer isn't handling them at all because remember, integer is only for whole numbers. So let's change these. Let's make them doubles rather than integers. So easy enough to do. It's just when you declare them, just use the double data type as opposed to integers. And you'll notice that we're still getting some errors appearing. So a couple of issues here. This is okay. So we've declared firstNum. So now it's a double, and that's okay because we're storing a value with a decimal place. Second we are having some issues there because we are trying to store a very precise value with a decimal place into an integer. So let's change that. Let's make that a double as well. And then here, the reason we're getting an error on this line, on line 14, is that we're trying to multiply two double two doubles together, firstNum and secondNum. They're of the double data type, and that's okay. However, we're trying to store the result in result. Okay, and remember, result is an integer. Okay, so that's not permitted in Java. So let's just try to fix that by changing result to double. Okay, and that's it. So if we run this program now, we should get our results slightly more precise than it was before, 322.72, etc., etc., etc. So quite a number of values after the decimal place. Okay, so yeah, so far so good. We are a couple of variables there of the double data type. We've stored some values there, multiplied them together, stored them in the right type of variable, the double variable, which we've converted result to, and just displaying the result. And everything is working pretty well. Now, one thing that you might want to do is if you end up with quite a number of digits after the decimal place, you might want to limit that, say for example, down to 2 decimal places. That's quite a common thing that you might want to do with your values, particularly if you're maybe dealing with maybe currency or any value really where you didn't want to have big long row of digits after the decimal place if you wanted to round it down. So Java's got quite a nice way of handling this. We can actually use something called an inbuilt function, which is a function that we can invoke. It's part of the Java language, and we can use it to help us. And in this case, we are going to use the inbuilt function called Math.round, which is going to allow us to round down this number to 2 decimal places. So let's give that a go. So what I'll do is I'm just going to add to our comments, and let's see if we can round the result to decimal two decimal places. Typing's not very good today. Okay, 2 decimal places, sometimes called 2dp. Okay, so that's fine. And let's, yeah, so to do this, we'll need a new variable, okay, another variable, which I am going to call resultRounded. Okay, so a nice simple name for the resultRounded variable. And yeah, so let's use Math.round. And there's a nice little technique that you can use here. If you multiply the original value, in this case the result, if you multiply that by 100 and divide it by 100, this is a nice little technique to round down your values to 2 decimal places. So Math.round, result times 100.0, multiply that by 100.0. That should round down to 2 decimal places and store the rounded result in the new variable called resultRounded. Now, if you run this as is, okay, we're still going to get the original number with the 6 digits after the decimal place. What you'll need to remember to do is to make sure that it's resultRounded that you're printing to the screen, and not just the original result. Okay, so let's try this to see how we get on. So there we go. So we're getting a nice value there, 322.73 rounded down to 2 decimal places. So that's a nice technique to take note of. And I'll put a copy of this code in the description of this video. So yeah, variables, don't forget, used to represent the data in your code while your program is running. You, as the programmer, have to decide what data types you want to use and also what names to give to your variables. And once you set the variable up, once you declare it of a certain data type, you can only store data of that type in that variable. And as you've seen, if you're doing any mathematical operations, you need to work in the same data type normally, as we saw in that example. And yes, some common data types which you'll come across and which we'll be covering. So integers, which are for whole numbers, doubles for real numbers, which are basically numbers with decimal place. We're going to be looking at a slightly different type of data type called string, which is used for text and so on. And yeah, so, and again, just always remember to choose reasonable names for your variables. And in this video, we multiplied together a couple of doubles, displayed the results, and we also rounded down to 2 decimal places in our result. So I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching as always. And yeah, thanks for watching, and take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.